What's up, Spurs Nation? Welcome to the first episode of Spurs Alley, the channel where we'll talk about past, present, and future, anything and everything Spurs. I'm your host. You can call me Chris. I'm a lifetime Spurs fan and self-appointed Spurs expert. I'd like to first thank you for joining me today, and I'm really excited to join the Spurs YouTube community. Let's go ahead and begin the show. Today, we'll talk about Wemby, of course, what we've seen from him and what he said, Wemby's summer plans, predictions, and also Keyshawn Johnson, some really asinine comments that he made that we need to go over about Wemby. So we're going to go over that. Also on the show, we're going to go over Brian Wright's performance so far on this Spurs rebuild, and we'll see what he can possibly do in the future for free agent moves this coming summer. Now, the last thing I want to go over is our rivals. We're going to look at our division rivals, Mavericks, Rockets, Pelicans, Grizzlies, and lastly, our arch nemesis, the Lakers. So, let's go ahead and talk first about Wembanyama. So let's begin talking about Wemby landing in the 2-1-0. Yes, he did his press conferences, all the media rounds that he needed to do. He even tried on his home white Spurs uniform, which was really cool, seeing him in that number 1. I mean, I was just getting some goosebumps just watching him just for that little bit of time that he was just shooting the basketball around a little bit. Now, people, they want to talk about the Spurs and being a small market and being boring, but he genuinely seems like he wants to build something special in the 2-1-0. He seems to really want to continue that French legacy that the Spurs created with Tony Parker, Boris Diaw, and really just the championships that were won with them. Now, he had dinner with legends Sean, Manu, David, Timmy, and Pop. He was there, just didn't see him in that picture. But he actually was not talking about anything as far as, where are the best clubs and things. At least that's what Sean was saying. He's not worried about the glitz and the glamour. He's really concerned about winning and winning often. If that doesn't excite you, I mean, what can excite you? This is Wembanyama, 19-year-old, that is asking about what is the best time to sleep on a back-to-back and just wanting to improve himself. So that's just amazing to see from a 19-year-old. Now, talking about glitz and glamour, there was something that Keyshawn Johnson said not that long ago that really, really annoyed me. Let me read you this quote. Wembanyama is going to be brought up to speed with the Spurs before he becomes a Laker in the next 5 years. In the end, he'll have a purple and gold on because, we target guys. We specifically look for certain guys. That's what we do. Now, he brought up Anthony Davis, Shaq as examples, but Wemby isn't like AD or Shaq. He's totally dedicated to the Spurs. He's been a Spurs fan since he was young. I mean, we have proof. We got him in wearing that Spurs Parker jersey when he was a young kid. He's also really, really not worried about media markets, and at least that's what we've seen from him. He's just totally dedicated to building on his legacy, creating something, as I said, special in the 2-1-0. Now, I don't think that Shaq and AD, honestly, are even the best examples to compare to Wemby. Wemby is more like Tim Duncan, more like David Robinson. That's who you want to compare Wemby to. And we all know what happened there. They stayed around, maybe, could have left, but they stuck with San Antonio, being a small market and supposedly boring team. But it sure isn't boring when you're winning championships, right? Now, for predictions, his rookie year, no, I don't think we're going to win the championship next year. However, I do think that Wemby's going to have a really, really good rookie year. Number one, he's going to win Rookie of the Year. Now, there are some good rookies out there. Really, the one that comes to mind with his biggest threat for that is Scoot. Scoot is going to be amazing with Portland. But Wemby is coming into a team that he's going to be the best player. he's going to be the leader on the team already. He's going to be the defensive anchor. The Spurs offense is going to start with Wemby. So that alone is going to give him a step up to be Rookie of the Year. And the amount of games that we should win, I'm thinking we're going to win 50 games, maybe more. At least 50, which is a big improvement from the 22 that the Spurs had without Wemby. So that's also going to play into his hands. Now, another thing is he going to be an all-star? I think he will be an all-star. Now, call me crazy, but 19-year-old Wemby as an all-star, I think makes perfect sense. Number one, he has the entire country of France that's going to vote for him, right? Also, he's going to show up. He's going to have the numbers. He may not be a starter, but he's definitely going to be voted in at least by the coaches. Next thing is NBA All-Defensive Second Team. NBA All-Defensive Second Team is very doable. Very doable because why? This guy's a monster on the defensive end. He's averaging 4 blocks in the French league, which it's not a slouch league, okay? It's a good league. They have a lot of ex-NBA players there, and he was holding his own. He is going to be, as I mentioned, our anchor on defense. And so not only is he going to get blocks, but he's going to get steals. He's going to get in passing lanes. And Wemby's also going to deter shots. So that, even though that doesn't show up in the stats, it is noted, okay? Now, as far as All-NBA, I think he can even reach All-NBA third team. Now, listen to this. All-NBA third team from a 19-year-old, it sounds also, outlandish, but he is Wembanyama, next generational talent. He should be, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, the best player in the next 2 to 3 years. So is it that far of a stretch to say that he's going to make All-NBA third team in his rookie year? I don't think so. I think he's actually has a really good chance of making All-NBA third team at least. Now, how many games do we think he's going to play? I think he's going to play 70 games. I think 70 is a good number for him, where he's not going to play in back-to-backs. He's going to be taken care of by the Spurs, and he's really, really going to take care of his own body. He knows himself. He wants to stay as long as possible in the league, and he's been preparing for this his whole life. So 70 games, that sounds really good. That's enough to get all those accolades I was mentioning. And so I'm just really excited for this rookie year for Wemby, and I really think he's really prepared and going to get prepared for this rookie year. Now, up next, we're going to talk about, Spurs GM Brian Wright. He did choose Wembanyama number 1, but what has he done before? Back in the day, we used to say, in Pop we trust. Now can we say, in Brian Wright we trust? So we're going to take a deep look into his past 4 years as a Spurs GM, with not only the picks he's made, but the moves, and really give him a grade on his rebuild with the Spurs. So stick around. We'll be right back right after this quick pause. Spurs Nation, welcome back to Spurs Alley. I'm your host, Chris. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about Spurs GM Brian Wright, because when I think of the Spurs' success, I know it takes more than just the number 1 pick for us to win championships. Pop and RC, they were obviously very instrumental in creating those championship caliber rosters throughout Timmy's career. But apart from building those super talented rosters, you also have to surround yourself with some really good talent in the front office. And when I think of one of the best hires for the front office in Spurs history, I can't help but think of current executive VP and GM for the OKC Thunder, Sam Presti. Now, before joining OKC, he actually was discovered by RC. He first started off as the video coordinator for the Spurs, and then came up through the ranks to eventually become the assistant GM for the Spurs. But because Presti was so highly regarded by Pop and the front office, he actually was called the resident genius. Now, they call him this because Presti, very intelligent, but also very creative in his trades, creating moves, and also just improving his team through just regular signings and draft picks. So now that Pop and RC have giving the reins to Brian Wright, have we found that gem in the front office? I mean, Brian Wright's resume is actually including some of the same type of things that Sam Presti had to go through. He actually was hired on back in 2006 in Orlando as just a summer intern, working his way up to player development and then becoming their college scouting manager. Now, from there, he stayed in Orlando for 8 years, but became the assistant GM to the Detroit Pistons for 2 years from 2014 through 2016. After that, in August of 2016, he became the assistant GM to the Spurs, and in 2020 became the official Spurs GM for the Spurs rebuild. So that's a lot of trust that RC, Pop, and the Spurs have put into Brian Wright. And I want to take just a closer look at some of these major moves that he's made to see what exactly he's done in this rebuild. So Brian Wright's moves so far, they've included a lot of trades, a lot of signings, but let's take a look at the most significant moves that he's made so far. He did sign DeJounte Murray to a team-friendly deal, but then was able to trade DeJounte Murray 2 years before that deal expired for Atlanta's 2 unprotected first-round picks. Yes, unprotected. And have you seen what the Atlanta Hawks have been doing? They barely made the playoffs last year. They are in dysfunction right now. Who knows where the Atlanta Hawks will be at next year and the next few years, especially with their unprotected first-round picks being in the Spurs' hands. Those could turn into lottery picks. Not only that, maybe top 5, top 3 picks. And that's 2 of them. That's fantastic right there. With also the possibility of a 3rd pick, first-round pick. He also traded DeMar DeRozan to Chicago for their 2025 first-round pick, plus Thaddeus Young. He also traded Thaddeus Young to Toronto that same year for their 2022 first-round pick. He also was able to trade fan favorite Derek White. Now, I'm personally happy that he traded Derek White to the Celtics because Derek White deserved more success. You know, he's a Spurs through and through. But that got us the Celtics first-round pick in 2022. Also, the 2028 swap, if we want, and some additional players there. He traded Jakob Poeltl to Toronto. And this is really interesting because, yes, he traded him for some second-round picks and a possible conditional 2024 first-round pick. But Jakob is actually a free agent. And who knows if they even keep Jakob there in Toronto. Very interesting if he's able to return to San Antonio and we still have those Toronto picks. Now, as far as draft is concerned, he's actually done relatively well in the draft. His 2020 draft was his first time up, and he was able to draft Devin Vassell. But we could have had Trey Halliburton. Now, was that a good trade for us? I mean, a good pick? I'm still happy with Devin Vassell. His progress and also the actual skill set that he has, very important right now and needed for the Spurs. He also was able to draft Trey Jones in the second round. And as we know, he ended up being our starter last year and really is a very, very serviceable backup point guard and, you know, occasional starter. You know, he's not going to be your all-star caliber starter, but, you know, he may be able to fill that role as just, you know, that serviceable second team point guard. Now, we also were able to get in 2021, and it's his biggest miss, the 2021 draft of Josh Primo and Joe Wieskamp. Those players are off the team already. We all know what happened with Josh Primo. I mean, nobody can really predict him being so immature, but in a rebuild, you really can't have any misses. Now, it was a pretty weak draft at the time, so it's not such a big miss, but still, you know, that's really his biggest mistake so far. 2022, he drafted Jeremy Sohan, was able to draft Malachi Branham with that Toronto pick and get Blake Wesley with that Celtics pick. Now, of course, Jeremy Sohan wearing number 10, the old Rodman number. He dyes his hair just like Rodman did. He has seemingly filled in the Derek White shoes of fan favorite. He plays hard. He gets under the skin of other players in the NBA, just like Rodman. So he has those ramen qualities that Spurs fans really, really like. And with Malachi Branham, I mean, we all know he's a 3-tier scorer. He can take it to the hole. He has that mid-range shot. He has that three-point shot. He just needs to keep improving. He's going to be a good player still. And Blake Wesley, also, just like Malachi, had an up and down year, but needs to show a little bit more. And he still has opportunity to show that he can be maybe that backup point guard or occasional fill-in shooting guard. And really, with all these draft picks, all the trades and the moves that he's made so far, I think that now picking up Wemby with the number 1 pick, you can't help but say that Brian Wright now we trust. In Brian Wright we trust. And so overall, I give him a grade of an A. Maybe A- because of that Josh Primo miss, but as I mentioned, it wasn't that big of a miss. It was a weak draft, and really he's done so well in setting up the Spurs' future with Wembanyama. I don't anticipate us going after any big names in the free agent market. Maybe the biggest one is Jakob Poeltl, as I was talking about earlier, but he's not going to overspend on anyone. He's not going to be in a hurry to spend the money that we have and overpay on a player. He's going to build this team the way we have before, organically, from inside, and that occasional can't miss free agent. And so, honestly, Brian Wright is that guy that is going to take us to that next level with continued success with the Spurs. And now that we've gone over Brian Wright, the success that he's had, it's time to take a closer look at our Spurs rivals. What are they doing? What are they going to do? Maybe what are they thinking about, if anything? But that's something that we're going to take a look at this next segment. So stick around. Welcome back, Spurs Nation, to Spurs Alley. I'm your host, Chris. And on this last part of the show, we're going to take a quick look at our division rivals. There is so much news going on. I mean, obviously, the Ja Morant suspension. We're going to get my take on that. New Orleans, they just extended Zion Williamson, so he got his contract extension there. What about Dallas? The Kyrie Irving saga. I mean, what's going on there? And the Rockets, are they really thinking about signing James Harden? So, before we finish, the Lakers will be the last thing we'll cover. I mean, they have a lot of decisions to make. They just got swept by the Nuggets, so I'm sure they're going to make some moves. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what they're going to do. So first, we're going to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies and Ja Morant. Of course, the biggest news after the finals was when Adam Silver handed down the 25-game suspension. He had already been penalized 8 games previously in the year for another gun incident. But this 25-game suspension, to me, just seemed a little excessive. I know not everyone's going to agree with me. Some people might call me, a little bit crazy. But to be honest, I mean, he has every right to carry a gun. He didn't do anything illegal. Yes, the NBA has an image to uphold and whatnot, but why not 15 games and some gun safety classes? I mean, where's the NBPA in all this? Jaren Jackson Jr., his own teammate, is a vice president for that Players Association, but they obviously have no power. Nothing has been done about that. And so I'm not, the biggest Ja Morant fan or a big Grizzlies fan, but it's just a little bit, I think, of an overreach for Adam Silver to penalize him for those 25 games. Now, as far as what the team's doing, they mentioned, as we know, they're not going to bring Dillon Brooks back. But in order to replace Dillon Brooks, they've already made a move to sign Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics. So that was a good pickup for them. And honestly, I don't see them missing Dillon Brooks at all now that they've got Marcus Smart back. For New Orleans, they just signed Zion to a contract extension that's 5 years, $194 million. That's a lot of money for a man that only played about 80 games in about, 3-4 years maybe. And they had no choice, honestly. I mean, was it good or bad for the Pelicans to re-sign him? They had to. They can't lose Zion for nothing. Now, because of that, they're looking to trade Jonas Valanciunas, which I've heard the latest rumor was that maybe the Spurs were interested in Jonas, which I hope not. They want to play Wemby at the 4, but I don't want Jonas at our 5. Give me Jakob instead. He's actually a defensive beast for center, and so that's where I'm looking at, not Jonas. Now for the Mavericks, Kyrie was linked to LeBron and the Lakers a lot, but there really isn't a market for Kyrie. Kyrie actually has to pretty much stay where he's at. He's gonna get re-signed by Dallas. They're going to try to make it work with him and Luka, and their only real interest in any other free agent is maybe Grant Williams from the Boston Celtics. For the Rockets, the expert and ex-Boston Celtics coach, Ime Udoka, which we won't get into the reason why he's the ex-Boston coach, he's actually wanting to upgrade the Rockets' defense and toughness. So they've been linked to signing Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Brook Lopez possibly, and they can sign all these guys because they have a lot of money in free agency in their cap space. So Harden, although yes, he was linked quite heavily to returning with a max contract, I don't think it's happening. They don't want to give him a max contract. So looks like James Harden's probably going to stay with the 76ers. Now, for the Lakers, what are the Lakers doing? LeBron James, maybe his last year, right? This next year. And obviously they need to make a lot of moves, but when we really think about it, they're kind of stuck. I mean, they gave up a lot for Anthony Davis. They actually are now looking for just anyone that's, tough, defensive-minded as well. They have their own players they need to sign. Their biggest target for themselves is Austin Reeves. They have to bring that guy back. He's now one of their fan favorites. And even though he was, kind of linked to the Spurs, that would never happen. They would definitely not let Austin Reeves walk out that door for anyone, honestly. They're going to try to get him back, as well as some other players, maybe D'Angelo Russell. One player, as a Spurs fan, that I'm interested in is Lonnie Walker, not because I want him back, but just because I want to see what he's gonna do. We know we saw him here be completely erratic. He was superstar one night and then missing for the next 2-3 games. So that's the thing about Lonnie, and that's the decision the Lakers have to make with him. Do they want to bring him back, knowing that he's not going to be as consistent as you'd like for him to be? For anyone else that the Lakers are going to make moves for, they're going to have to make trades and really get creative in that sense. So that's our rival watch for our division. And, of course, the Lakers, we're going to keep up with it. They actually, the free agency season just started, so they're actually going to be making a lot of moves still, and we're going to be keeping up with it. Let's see what's in store for the next season. All right, Spurs Nation, so you made it to the end of the video. I sincerely appreciate you joining me today. I'm going to try to get these out at least once a week. So if you like the content, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell on, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.